All right, good morning, folks. Thanks for coming on down to the assembly here. We've got a good program for you today. As you may or may not know, we have an organization, the North Penn Alumni Athletic Association. And each year, when there's not COVID, we have a Hall of Fame induction ceremony. That'll be taking place here tomorrow evening. And while we honor those who have been successful athletes here at North Penn, the organization also honors those who have achieved greatness in other fields, whether it be the medical field or communications or, in this case, literature. So we have a special guest here this morning to talk to you about her accomplishments in the field of literature. She is a North Penn grad, 1962. Her name is Donna Huston Murray. She's widely published as a fiction author, and her genre that she writes is mysteries. More specifically, cozies, and she's going to tell you a little bit about that. She's created two beloved main characters in some series of novels. One of them, Lauren Beck, the other, Ginger Barnes, as female detectives. For Better or Worse, which was one of her novels featuring Ginger Barnes, was a finalist in the National Indie Excellence Awards for mysteries. Two of her other titles reached #1 or #2 on Kindle's Mystery and Female Sleuths list. Donna was a 1962 grad of North Penn High School. She took some secretarial courses at North Penn back in the day as kind of a backup for writing. She was the editor of the yearbook in 1962, so the Accolade yearbook was edited by our guest today. She attended Rider University, picked up an associate's degree in secretarial sciences, and has gone on to write many, many novels and mysteries over the years. So she's here to tell you about her journey through North Penn and through the world of writing. Let's please give a warm welcome to Ms. Donna Huston Murray, our Lifetime Achievement Award winner.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, honored, humbled, grateful, and a little bit scared. About 3 months ago, I needed some more business cards, and I thought, Lifetime Achievement Award, wow, that's really amazing to me and unexpected and very, very special. Maybe I should put that on my card. But I thought, well, maybe I'll ask my daughter. And I said, if I do that, will it make me sound old? She said, you are old. And I thought, well, no, I'm not. But then I realized my daughter's usually right, so yeah, probably I am. What that means to you is I've been around long enough to have learned that some things are true. And what I thought I'd tell you this morning is what I've learned doing what I do, writing mysteries, and how that applies to you. The first is how to choose your occupation. And I'm going to start with the arts because obviously that's what I do. But second of all, because people who go into the arts very often decide when they're very young. I was 10, and maybe some of you have already decided too. How about it? Anybody going into the arts? Raise your hands. Yay! Good for you. Good to see it. Now I'm going to tell everybody what the difficulties are when you do choose a career like that, because it's very different from other things. You never get a salary, for example. There is an author named John Gardner who put it very well. He said, apart from some techniques, you can't teach anybody the arts. They just sooner or later catch on. How would you like a career that you had to learn by trial and error? It's kind of crazy, right? The other thing is after you do get published, you're relying on your audience, your readers, for your success, and it's all very subjective. It's not like food or clothing or anything that they absolutely need. It's something they think they want, and you rely on them for a good reputation and your success. So why do people do this? Well, I'm going to tell you a story to explain. My husband was head of a school, and one of the board members had invented one of the first birth control pills. His name was Gordon Hughes, and he had a yacht built for himself. It was 110 feet long. It was more like a small ship. So Gordon invited my husband and me and some other guests to sail up the coast of Maine. And I thought, wow, this is my opportunity to find out what the big deal is about yachts. I grew up on Sumneytown Pike, not a yacht in sight, didn't know anybody who owned one, didn't know anybody who'd ever been on one. So I'm going to watch Gordon and see what it's all about. So we go into town, the guests go out and look around, and Gordon doesn't go. He's still on the boat. So I'm thinking, okay, what's this all about? When I go back, I'll see what he's doing. Well, he was winding rope around on the deck, and then he was hosing down the deck. And I thought, oh, he likes to sail the boat. So that's what it's like to be in the arts. A yacht is a luxury, right? It is a luxury to be able to do your work in the arts. And the reason you do it is because you love the work. That is your primary reward. That's what you can expect to be your reward. Anything else is gravy. So my son said to me, what did you want to do? What did you do when you wanted to quit? I said, I never wanted to quit. And I did have a bad year. There was like a convergence of things that were very disappointing, and I wasn't having fun writing anymore. I thought to myself, what am I going to do about this? This is what I love. I've got to find a way to get the fun back. I thought, okay, I'll write a book just for me. Don't have to show it to an editor or an agent or anybody. I'm just going to do it for me, which I did. And that book became a finalist in the Indie Excellence Awards. What does that mean? That means in the arts, you have to please yourself before you can please anybody else. Let's see. Now I think I'm going to talk about how you can choose your career. Everybody else, well, partly why I was telling you that is because I want you to respect what the people who go into the arts go through. It is very difficult, and support is very welcome and needed from the people who don't do it. So now what I recommend you do for yourself if you're not going into the arts is choose a career that uses as many of your talents as you can find. Put another way, pick something that uses as many things that you're good at as you can find. That means you'll be happier in your work and have a greater chance of success. See, I'm nervous. Okay, how do you know what you're good at? That's not so hard. If it's easy for you, you're good at it. My son went out for cross country when he was in high school, and he was tall and thin, and he ran very smoothly, and yet he liked other sports better, and he didn't really appreciate what he was doing. And I said, Casey, it's easy for you. You're good at it. And he thought, oh, maybe I should respect what I'm doing and enjoy it more. Our daughter went to college, and she started as an English major, but she chose the college because it also allowed her to look into becoming a physical therapist or an athletic trainer, which she started to do both. And finally, after some months of her doing it, she wasn't quite so sure which to pick. And I said, Robin, you've been an English nerd since you were born. Don't you think you should be an English major? Finally, she agreed with me. That was one of the few times. And she is now an English teacher. She teaches writing. She writes herself beautifully, I add. And she's my editor, and she narrates my audiobooks. She's doing what she loves and what she's good at. And it worked out. Now, how about when you do choose what you're doing, how can you be great? Well, that's not so hard either. A great person is someone who does their best every day. It's as simple as that. Nobody can ask you to do more than that. A great person just does their best every day. It's in every one of you. Now, this is for the shy people. It's a writer's tip, and it's really useful for anyone. Suppose you're in a social situation and you're trying to break the ice and make friends. Writers are very welcome in those situations, by the way, because when we ask a question, we listen to the answer. Most people are like looking over your shoulder to the next person they want to talk to, and they're not really interested in you. But my trick is I ask the person that I'm meeting, what are your interests? The reason I do that is because it cuts through all the silly things that you ask, like where are you from, what's your major, where do you live, that sort of nonsense, how's the weather. If you ask somebody what they're interested in, they're going to tell you something they're passionate about. And you've already cut through all the nonsense, and now you know something real about them. I also like to do that because I want to know what I'm missing. And that's a quick way to find out somebody else's passion. For example, I was at a recruiting breakfast at University of Pennsylvania, my husband's school, and it was for football players and their parents. So there's Penn staff, parents, and high school kids. It was a very boring event. I saw a fellow standing over to the side, and I went over and said, what are your interests? He said, fencing. And the next thing I know, he's lunging across the room, showing me a fencing move. And the rest of the people are looking at us and saying, why are you having fun? I go to a lot of high school reunions. My husband's in education and taught and coached and as head of a school. We go to a lot of high school reunions. And I know you'll be there too. And what happens is there's always one person having a great time, and then your partner's miserable. So being on the miserable side myself, I like to entertain myself and one other miserable person as I can. So one time I'm sitting at a dinner, and across the way is a man who's looking miserable. And I said, what are your interests? He said, my job. And I said, well, what's your job? Well, he packaged items to ship for a department store. A little bit of a challenge for me, but I started to imagine what he did, and I realized that he took items of every size and description, put them in a crate so that they wouldn't break in transit. So I finally said to him, gee, I guess your day's different every time. He said, wow, you don't know the half of it. Now, did I tell you when I was unpublished, what was I doing then? Why did I stick with it? Because that was about more than 20 years, by the way. I was learning how to express myself clearly. And this is something you use every day. That's why you go to English classes now. And it's, nobody likes to be misunderstood, so it's something that's worth practicing. The other thing that I was doing was research. This is something I was interested in and something I wanted to write about, but I would never have explored if I hadn't been trying to write. For example, I wanted to write about a rock climber and knew very little about it. So I interviewed a man who took parties up Mount Everest every other year. And in my tactful way that I've been practicing, I said, why do you do that? He said, well, he looked off into the distance. He said, you'll see this rock and you'll think, I want to become more intimate with that. And I thought, you're just as crazy as I thought you were. I interviewed a garage mechanic to ask how to bollocks up a school bus. And I had a way that I thought it should be done. And I told him, and he said, oh, please, 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 please don't do that. He said, somebody will read it, they'll do it, and I'll have to fix it. Okay, and he suggested me to do it another way, which I did. Sorry. I also interviewed 40 different people that had to do with horse racing. Now, I was a young woman. I was in my early 20s. It was the first time I was going to try to write a book. And I had a wonderful time interviewing these people. I stood on the starter's box. What the starters look for is the horse's front feet to all be on the ground, and then they ring the bell. I stood on the patrol tower, and the horses look like bullets when they come at you. You can't see their legs or their head. It's really a memorable sight. So the one problem was some people weren't taking me seriously. I was new, and I was a little insecure, and they sensed it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to pretend that I'm already a professional to get their respect, which is what I did, and that worked. Fake it till you make it. I also wrote an article called Instant Roots. There was a TV series called Roots where a man who had been enslaved came to the United States, and this whole series talked about his family saga. It was a very popular series. It was very well done, and everybody knew about it. So I thought, if I write an article called Instant Roots, they'll notice. What I wanted to do was interview my family and on tape and just get our family history. So I started with my grandmother, who was 83 at the time. She told me a story about when she was 3. This is in the late 1800s, where she was ready to go to a birthday party and her family wasn't, but she decided to go. So nobody could find her, and her family was going crazy. Finally, they did, and apparently my great-grandfather sat her on a table and said, now, Florence, do you think you should have done that? She says, no, and that was the end of that. She also told me about her wedding and parties that they had as teenagers called Please Provide. The boys brought lemons, the girls brought cake, wild stuff. But I have it on tape in my grandmother's voice, and it's a really a family treasure. I also interviewed my husband's family, and he had a grandfather who was a front runner for the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Apparently, he had false teeth that were uncomfortable, so I threw them in the Grand Canyon and never wore teeth again. These are things that we would have never heard if we hadn't sat down and asked, and I suggest that you give it a try. It could be a family treasure for you, too. What did I have to learn to be an author? This one's going to sound a little strange, but I had to learn to listen to my own thoughts. What do I mean by that? Well, I was driving down Main Street, Lansdale, and stopped at a red light. Coming up from the train station was a young man in army fatigues, smoking a cigarette, and he had sort of an interesting attitude about him. And then while I was waiting for the light, I made up a little story about him in my head. He had a girlfriend, motorcycle. I used that later in a book. But what does this mean to you? I maintain that you have fleeting impressions that go in and out of your head all the time. And I want you to practice listening to them, just because it will help you when you have something serious going on in your life, and you'll be more ready to listen to your thoughts and be honest with yourself what they are. The honest part is the important part. You don't have to share your thoughts with anybody else, but I want you to pay attention for your own purposes. For example, you want to get married. You have someone in mind. Your thought process goes something like this: I'm going to marry this person because they'll make either a good husband or a wife. But if you're honest with yourself and the rest of that sentence is for somebody else, maybe you better think twice. It takes a little practice, You don't have to tell anybody else, but you do know yourself better when you're in the habit of being honest with yourself what your real thoughts are. So how did I get published? Well, I was getting lovely rejections from agents. Now that sounds horrible, but it really means that you're getting close. They like what you're doing. They want to see more. They just didn't like what you sent them. So I had to decide what was it I wasn't doing that I could do to get from the unpublished side of the Grand Canyon to the published side. So what I did was figure out what it was that was missing. What did they want that I wasn't doing? They like a series for mysteries because a recurring character gives you more readers and more profit for the publisher. They also want you to use a topic that's marketable to a lot of people. So here's where I had to be shrewd. And I figured, okay, the Philadelphia Flower Show attracts more than 100,000 people all the time. It's internationally famous. I like it. Maybe more people would like to know more about it like I would. So I set a murder at the Philadelphia Flower Show, called the book Final Arrangements. And one more thing, remember I said you'd finally catch on? I hadn't quite caught on, so that book took a little while to write. But when it was done, I attracted an agent, and he got me a 3-book contract inside of 3 months. It was with St. Martin's Press, which is a major New York publisher. I was with them for 7 books, and by the time I was done, I wanted a break. I've been myself. My main character was me, wife of a head of school, son and daughter, likes to solve mysteries. One of my editors had said, why don't you try a bigger book? And I thought, well, what is that, first of all? What it means is it's more global crime and a more complicated plot. Okay. I need a new character. I don't want to be me now. I want to, have some fun. So I'm shopping around for ideas. My husband broadcasts University of Pennsylvania football, and I go with him, and especially on the road trips, and we were up at Cornell. When we go up there, it's cold. And he lets me sit in the booth. The booth is like smaller than a closet. But they open the window and hang a microphone out so that they get the crowd noise. So the booth is cold. Okay, next door is Cornell's VIP lounge. So somebody was really kind enough to let me sit there. So now I'm like the enemy in the midst of the opponents and trying to be unobtrusive. But somebody behind me is talking about pumpkin pecan pie, and I wanted the recipe. So I start chatting with this woman, and I get her life story. She skydived 34 times. She fed sharks from a cage underwater. She begged to fly retired Air Force planes, and then she learned how to fly them, and then she learned how to repair them. And I thought, wow, this is the bravest woman I've ever met. Wouldn't she make a great heroine? So, yeah, okay, I name her Lauren Beck and start writing the book. And I show some of it to the agent I had at the time. And she says, nope, not gonna work. I said, why? She's so heroic, she's wonderful. What's wrong? She said, she's too brave. You have to, when you write something dramatic, the readers aren't going to notice because your woman doesn't react. Oh, okay, back to the drawing board. I'm thinking, okay, this woman that I'm modeling her on, Carol, also was in and out of an iron lung for 9 years. She got well, and part of the reason was she was brave is because she just got over being scared. So I thought, okay, I will give my character a major illness. She'll get over it. She's 30. She's an ex-cop. She's vulnerable, but she's got mad skills to take care of herself and solve these mysteries. That worked. Again, took me a while to transition to that. So now I have another agent. I tend to fire my agents. This guy I got by accident, was sloppy with facts, sloppy with his typing, and had ruined a book in the marketplace for me because he simply didn't know anything about mysteries. He'd only read 4 in his life, so I'm thinking, I can't give this guy my special book. So rather than spend another year and a half going through the channels you need for New York, I said, I'm going to bring it out myself. It was right when independent publishing was starting, and I felt like I was catching a wave. And it turned out to be fun. I really love being independent. No deadlines, higher royalties, people that really are eager to help you. It's really fun. And I still do it. Meanwhile, that book called What Doesn't Kill You, I used to call it Cured but Not Out of Danger, but it kept showing up online among books about ham. So it won an honorable mention from Writer's Digest in their writing contest. Now, to help you understand what that means is, Writer's Digest is like a 100-year-old magazine, and I grew up reading it. I met one of the former judges online, and she said, do you know how many books yours had to beat to get an honorable mention? No, I had no clue. She said, thousands. Oh, okay, thank you. I'm not the most secure person, and to imagine myself getting something that monumental, it just threw me. But that book got it, and so did the next one. Okay. What does it feel like? Oh, one more thing about independent publishing. Publishing yourself used to have a real stigma because there was no vetting through agents and stuff, and the quality of the books was really poor. These days, people who know more about publishing are putting out pretty good books independently. 50% of the books on the bestseller list are independently published now. And if you held the 2 books side by side, you wouldn't know whether it was a big house doing it or an independent publisher who knows what they're doing. It's very, very different. But what does it feel like to be published? Pretty great, to be honest. What I'm doing every day is talking to somebody with my books, while I'm writing in my head, but nobody's listening. When you're published, it's more like placing a phone call and somebody answers. Now they're into your head, they've read your story, they know a lot about you, and you have a friendship started. The other thing is you get to do book signings, which are really fun. They park you in front of a bookstore with a table and a pile of books, and they say, go ahead, make friends. Well, okay, that sounds good. One time a woman came by and she said, oh, you've got a new mystery. I'm going to take this to the hospital with me next week. Okay, good. Another time a woman comes by and she says, my sister's in a wheelchair and she loves mysteries. I'm going to get this for her. Okay. Another man says, my father's a shut-in and all he does is read. See where I'm going with this? It turns out that what I love to do and what I thought was just fun is something people need. Escape fiction is very, very welcome when your own situation is tough and you would like to get out of it. For example, during COVID. So I never looked at my work the same again. One more thing, I went to a convention called Malice Domestic. I love that name. It had to do with cozy mysteries. Now, cozies mean an amateur detective, very little violence and gore, and an enclosed environment like a small town, a cruise ship, an island, something like that. The bigger books have a wider ranging crime and, as I said, a more complicated plot. So that's what I was trying to do. But Malice Domestic is just cozies. So the last day, they have, the 300 authors and 300 fans and 100 authors get together for coffee before you go home. A woman came up to me and she said, "I just want to thank you." And I thought, great, what did I do? She said, "My daughter started reading because of your books." Well, I was dumbstruck. I hardly knew what to say to her. I think I mumbled something really grateful, and off she went. So I get home and I thought, that's the best compliment I'm ever going to get as an author. But I was wrong. This is it. Thank you, folks. Selfie. Oop. Okay. Smile. Thank you, guys.
All right, folks, one more round of applause for Donna Huston Murray, our Lifetime Achievement Award winner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, our Hall of Fame induction ceremony is tomorrow evening here at the high school. If you can't make it out, you can watch it live on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/NPTV.